Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Uh, we are back. I just did MSc, so we've had a recording break, right, Henry? And
Yep.
welcome, Henry, my typical co-host. And then we're
Woo.
also welcoming one of our friends, Mr. Ryan
R.
Kelly.
R. Kelly is on the podcast,
R.
everyone.
Kelly.
R. Kelly is here and on the podcast.
I made up a moniker for him, Ryan the Assessor Kelly. Like an MMA, call out where they all
I
have
know.
names. You're the
I know.
assessor.
WWF at best.
I thought he was going to come out and rip his shirt off to this. You're going to play
Yeah,
I
let's
Am a Real
record the
American
intro.
music.
Yeah.
Remember that song, I Am a Real American? He's going to come out to that and he's like, I'm Ryan, the Assessor Kelly. I'm going to write some deficiencies.
I mean, that's what it feels like most of the days now.
I
Right?
cannot imagine. I mean, the metrology world is perfect. There are no errors. No one is confusing measurement uncertainty. No one is confusing calibration. We have new definitions out where, calibration is you just do it until you get numbers that you like or your customer likes. I mean, there's stuff that is out there now that there's just nothing wrong with industry, no problems to discuss. So we
Yeah,
can just,
Ryan's here to throw all the roses at the industry today. No, actually
yes.
actually, I do have some thoughts on you, Ryan, but before we get into that stuff, we have a tradition. This is the first time you're on the podcast, so we know you, so everyone will notice we're really friendly with you because you're actually a friend of ours. So it's one of those that this is a very loose podcast. But can you tell everyone how the heck you got into metrology? Who dragged you here? Who's keeping you here? How did this happen to you?
So the same way you got dragged here, the lovely Marine Corps. I joined the military at 18 because I said, you know what, this high school stuff, I'm over it. I don't want to do college yet. Let's take a 4-year break. And they're like, hey, we have avionics open contract. We'll give you $5,000 bonus. I was like, sign me up. Because at 18, $5,000 is a lot of money.
Right?
So at the end of my open contract, I got assigned good old MOS 6492, which has a very lengthy name, but we'll shorten it to calibration. So I did 9 years in the Marine Corps, 4 of it in Yuma, about another 4 in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Once I got out, I worked the third party circuit for a little bit, went to DoD private contracting for Lockheed Martin, went to healthcare for a little bit with Agilent Technologies, and then back to the third party circuit where now I'm just employed by myself and then doing part time work as an assessor for A&AB.
Which is gonna be the root of what we talk about, but that's also where
Yep.
when you were at Lockheed is where I met you, in
Yes.
and I'm Dave publicly said on Facebook that they utilize signs, so I'm free to talk about that one, but,
They do what now?
they did, they have the they've talked about it previously in the Facebook group, that, metrology group.
They utilize science? What is that about?
Sign.
Oh, sign. Oh, I thought you said
Sign.
science. I was like,
So
wait, what are we doing with science?
that's how I met Ryan because he got to see the growth of Sign from the absolute beginning and took the certification tests and stuff like that, and I have, noted over the time the very detail-oriented nature of Mr. Ryan Kelly, and
Did he
so
pass?
he did. I think he
I
was
think I had the
the
highest
high
score
score
for the
for a
longest
while
time.
for a long time. Someone has come across and beat you, but I bet you'd beat that now as well. But
That's not fair. There were 4 questions that weren't answerable.
So
yeah, but we
out
gave you
of
credit for
out of
those.
5 questions, you got 1 right?
Yeah, I put my name up top.
And you were the highest? You had the highest score
Hey,
for that's awesome.
documentation and calibration is important, right?
Yeah, I
But
was surprised when I did get the highest score because I didn't take that certification test to almost a year after I had reviewed the entire course. So that was purely based off of my shorthanded notes that helped me study for that test.
So you
because you could,
had that is an impressive accomplishment. You had they told you you had the highest score?
yeah,
Um,
from
Yeah, because I
the
think
test group. So
Oh,
we
okay.
had to do
Okay.
a certain amount, which was it was over 100. I can't remember the exact. This is years back, but so we had to like mass test the fairness of the test, right? Like you have to get data, and if you start to see questions trending or whatever, and
Right. Yeah.
in those initial groups, I think your record stood for maybe 1 to 2 years, and then I mean, there's just been the course has gotten better. There's the education all across has gotten better. People are better, a little bit more, and if I remember correctly, I'm going to be really fair to you, Ryan, because if I remember correctly, the person that holds the high score now, their lab has been working with us on this stuff for a couple years. So like in general, they know what to expect. You went into this thing cold.
yeah, yeah, and then even colder, with a year break where you're like, hey, you want to take a test on it now? I'm like, what? And I'm like, sure.
Right?
I was like, give me a couple days, I'll knock it out.
But you can attest for it. We come out of the military, and look, I understand where we're coming from, right? We don't have time to train everybody on everything. That would be
No.
very pie in the sky, right? But we
Right.
get here's what you need to know to work in Marine Corps Cal Labs, maybe Navy Cal Labs, because we do have the shipboard stuff, right? Like panel meter calibration and
Well,
shipboard
I mean, we
gauge,
we had we had sailors in classes with us, so the intent was, you're still following, what was it, the
the NAMP.
4790, yeah, the NAMP. So if they could throw us on a ship easily, and there it'd be a seamless transition, right?
Right.
So
And they did.
yeah,
Well, so but yeah, it was just incomplete training, I guess. And so when you come out of the military, it's you go from this inflated sense of like, hey, I'm a lab manager, I'm a CDI, right? Collateral duty inspector, our version of quality,
Because
right?
it'd be too easy to have the same name.
Right. And then
yeah,
and so you have this inflated sense, and then you get out to the civilian world, and then you get crushed because 17025 much different, decision
Different
rules much
acronyms.
different, right? Is there decision or do we give customers choice in the Marine Corps, Ryan?
no, there is zero choice.
Yeah. But
I mean, you know what? Sometimes you were lucky when you went into the database and you looked up a model. There might be two different cal procedures you could use. So
And then what? You just picked the one that got you the results you wanted?
no, they were essentially the same procedure. One might have just been written more.
like button by
How do I say
button.
that? Yeah, I was going to say
Ah,
dummy proof. Because we are
yeah.
talking love the Marine Corps, but we are talking about the Marine Corps here.
Yeah, and flying.
Because
Like when it comes to flying, you don't want you don't want people thinking too much.
Ryan, were you in when they released, instead of the 17-20 series, they went to the -50 or 51 series?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, those procedures went button by button, like press preset, and it had a picture of what the preset button was, and it's press this, press that. Like it told you the exact buttons to press,
Right.
not like just a general, okay, well, torque it at 20%. Like it would tell you what 20% was.
Yeah. And I argue that that's not to our benefit when we come out.
Eh, no,
No, it,
no, it's
it does
not.
not.
It's not. Though it does help. There's some levels of this. So you get in this conversation of flexibility versus rigidity. And sometimes you have to just have that idiot proof documented
Right.
procedure.
You're right. You're right.
Right. That you have too much on the line, too many people, and you imply, yeah, that's, I don't know how my brain hurts when I start thinking about the government and everything it oversees and all of the stuff and who you report to, who oversees this, how many people are involved in just changing a procedure. It's like they say it's like an act of God sometimes, right? And
Yeah.
7 engineers
Mhm.
review it, and uh,
I
and
have
then
to
Engineers,
anytime,
you
yeah,
mean interns?
yeah,
yeah, it is
I've been
questionable
present for
sometimes.
when NavAir would update a procedure and they would send an intern out, and they would step by step run through the procedure and write it simultaneously.
I, and if somebody's validating it and going over it, I mean, maybe it's a learning opportunity. I can see all sides of this.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's
Yeah.
a whole. Um, there's not a right or the wrong here. It's just the only thing that I think is wrong on our whole system is buying lowest cost. And I'm saying that because if you even look at roadways and stuff like that, if you the low bidder and you have to repair the road in 3 years versus a superior bidder that's going to cost you less for 10 years, that's a tough one for me to swallow, because we actually end up paying double or triple for the lowest cost, if not more than that, because then people have all their headaches and everything else. So that's it.
Well, and it might sound like we're dogging on the Marine Corps and the damp and all that. And it's because we were in it, right? We
Yeah.
were tortured by it. But I mean, it does work well. I mean, we've worked with enough Marines and sailors that you have such a wide variety of who makes it to your lab that having it be a little dummy proof, that is definitely valid. And then you're going to have stuff that is high priority, but also high risk, right? And that's the funny
Yep.
thing about military cals is that it would be so easy to come up with like a lab management course or a symposium, something where they describe what risk is and all these things, right? That we're already doing in some ways, but we're doing it more in the, leadership aspect. Like, hey, I know this corporal and sergeant, they know what they're doing in the ACDC section. And with this whiskey 10 or this very important 155, all these old test sets that everyone dreads. But you pick the people that can handle it and have been able to successfully run through those before or whatever. So there is good there, but like in general, you just don't understand how the whole system works, right? And I think that is so important when we're trying to do measurements and we don't really, it's so abstract. Does that make sense? Especially since like the first thing we teach in the schoolhouse is Visvar. Like why?
Hmm.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you mentioned RF right there, because going back to the military thing where you said, hey, once we got out, we realized we didn't know anything. Bringing up RF's a good topic
Except for
because,
RF. We know a lot about RF.
right, well, we do, but we
That's
didn't.
important.
Oh,
Because I
true.
remember getting to my first lab and all of a sudden they're like, well, you didn't do the single sideband phase noise. And I'm like, what is that? That's not something the Navy Marine Corps tests. Now, if you look at the Air Force, they test it, the Army tests it, but for some reason, Navy Marine Corps said, hey, that is not needed for our platform, even though everyone has a variation of the same exact aircraft. So, that never made sense to me. But that's when I learned, hey, these procedures don't test all warranted specs, right? They're tailored for the aircraft or, whatever they were designed to be for, right?
Mhm.
So when now, I'm assessing people and they're using guide apps and, I'll see on the purchase order,
Hmm.
warranted specs. I'm like, all right, well, let's take a look at the guide app procedure you're using. Is it testing all the warranted specs? And, like I said, if it's an RF piece, I already know the answer, right? Because we know single sideband phase noise isn't
Mhm.
on that.
Well, I love
So,
that. We see this all
Yeah,
the
that's
time
awesome.
when we're teaching, because so when electronics has become very popular, and I predicted that in some ways because I mean electronics is everything, right? Like even in force,
yeah.
you have to know electronics, right? You have to. Um,
We're
so
ready for a solar flare to knock everything out.
just
Just so,
yeah, we'll
yeah,
toast everything.
100 years of the proving ring, analog device. We can bring it back. Yeah, we're good.
But one of my favorite capstone calibrations that we do in that when I do in person is the Fluke 754, right? That's a perfect example because I'll teach that program in government contracting or I'll teach it publicly, right? Where in public we usually use the Fluke procedure, right? That's what's publicly available. I have a good relationship with Fluke. I show that procedure and it's a very challenging procedure. It has a lot of different things that it shows, right? But then you go to some of those environments that are the contractors and they have the guide up ones and they do not test like the negative direction. They don't test a lot of the functions that you do.
Well, and those procedures are built more around, we all hate saying it, TAR, right? It's if
Mm.
you look at the military guided procedures and you look at what the specs are. So, the nice thing about the military design was it meets a lot of dot one, right? So your unit under test, range parameters, tolerances, right? And
Mhm.
then the standard underneath, and then maintaining that 4-to-1 ratio. And you can always look at those and just divide by 4, and yep, that's going to be the exact value that's down in that measurement standards table. Um, but then you go to look at Fluke's procedure, and it's not written that way. It's all about the TUR and the 99% confidence level.
This is interesting to hammer this out, because you get somebody that's in quality, or somebody finds all these procedures. They don't want to write their own. And then they go out and they get the guide up procedure. And they don't put these things that you guys are talking about together. And it's important for people to realize this, that they may not be testing everything because they don't need to. They're written specifically for that branch and what they are
Right.
doing.
Right.
So, yeah, they can skip over some things that on the commercial side, not okay at
Absolutely.
all.
Right.
And other labs can also go out to get the guide app procedures, and they can say, oh, I pulled this. I'm Mr. Quality Manager, Mrs. Quality Manager. I pulled this procedure. We're going to say our lab follows it. And yet the technicians probably some of them have no idea what that is. And they just pulled it there for some reference, and they haven't really trained on it too. There's so many holes. I open jokingly, but I don't want to be negative all the time, but there's problems out there. And I think having Ryan on, the two Ryans here, but having
Assessor.
Ryan, the assessor, Kelly on, and having been able to work with Ryan, he is very detail oriented. Like I'm not surprised that he aced the test, because when you send him something and he reviews it, or his responses and answers is like, holy crap, here's somebody that actually is on top of things and knows a lot of this stuff really, really well. So if not a plug for Ryan, it is a plug for you, Ryan. If I want somebody to come in and audit my lab and do an internal audit, I want someone like Ryan. Where the plug isn't is he's not going to be the easiest assessor if you have him come into your lab, though he's going to make you better. And at the end, any lab wanting to be better should want Ryan to come in. The negative side of it is, if you want to perceive it this way, is any lab that doesn't want to get better probably shouldn't have Ryan come in.
If you think you're perfect. So thank you, Henry, because you're leading into exactly what I was talking about. So Ryan has a certain set of skills, the assessor.
Yeah.
Ryan, the assessor, has a certain set of skills.
Yes.
He can dig. And when did you know that you had the ability to just dig, Ryan? And what we're talking about, those listening. So if you think that your programs are set up right, or that all your procedures are in line, or all your customer requirements are in line, and yada, yada, you get what I'm saying. Like everything, all the ducks are in a row. See if they're lined up, send in Ryan Kelly. And
Yep.
We've all talked privately, right? I've mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're friends, right? So Henry and I are on the aspect of like, that's a good thing. Like, I want to know how to get better, right? However, and I think Ryan, you'll chat about this, it is not always perceived well, right? And I think it's a problem in the industry right now where it's like, hey, we don't need to do this stuff. No one's asking for this. Like they just want stickers and stuff. And it's like I experienced it here in Utah, and this is not a new concept. We've chatted about this for seasons and seasons, right?
Oh yeah.
But I since you're branching out on your own, I think it's important for people to understand that you're like the Superman of those things, like of the digging type thing, right? Like you should have been in law or something.
Oh my gosh.
My parents said that because I used to argue with them all the time and bring up all these points. But I mean, hey, I appreciate the comments, guys. That very kind of you. But Ryan, to your original question, when did I realize I was kind of like this? I always laugh when I see that meme from It's Always Sunny with Charlie Day with all the strings pointing to everything. It's one of those things, once I start to get engrossed in someone's quality management system and I start to be able to connect the dots, also, knowing 17025 as well as I do, and then, all the other things that tie into it, whether it's direct policies by A&AB, or say it's another lab asking me to, look over their documents and having to look either at, NAV labs or A2LA's policies. And then, tying in ILAC P9, P14, all these other external things, it just kind of, I've always been able to data mine very well. And it kind of just works that way with me, right? Where I'm able to kind of just connect all the dots and see where everything fits and where, it might be a possible issue. And that's where a lot of the times I go in there, it's labs might have, gone 6, 7 assessments in a row without a single finding, which, it's a sampling process, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, but I tend to really dive into their quality management system before I get there, so I have a better understanding. Because, as you guys said, you want your labs to be better, right? You see this as an opportunity for help, and where I kind of get the pushback and contention is I'll go into a lab, like I said, a few years in a row, no findings, and then they're
Mhm.
walking away with 7, 8, 9 non-conformances, right? I think the most I've written once was 50-ish.
And these aren't like brand new issues, right? That's what you're saying. Like these have you can tell that they've been
Mhm.
around for a minute, but maybe just haven't been noticed or whatever.
Right, and some of that, and I know why they're getting upset. It's they pay a lot of money for their accreditation and to bring assessors in to essentially find these things. But just like any human out there, right? We all have our own biases. We all have certain things we look for. That's why they try to make sure you always don't have the same assessor, right? But at the same time, I mean, not everything's going to be found during a sampling process. Like, if I'm viewing your scope and, I'm going through some things, like I might not be able to review every budget as thoroughly as I need to, right? It might get a quick glance, but the ones that I am reviewing for, competency, if I catch something, it definitely gets written up. And a lot of times, I mean, I just wrote a post about it. You have a lot of, larger labs that are missing certain things like reproducibility, or,
Mhm.
they'll be missing the resolution for either the unit under test or the measurement standard, either or, right? So, a lot of these are things that have always been common. This was common 10 years ago, just like equipment, firmware and software revision. I remember in 2018, 2019, people a year or two after, people posted that was part of the top 10 deficiencies, people
Mhm.
not recording their firmware or software revisions for their equipment. So, on your Fluke devices, you power it up, it says it's software revision, whatever, that's supposed to be recorded with the equipment. And to this day, it is still one of the major issues. I think almost every assessment I go into, it's always a non-conformance.
And
That's a hard one.
well, and Henry, oh, sorry
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
interrupt,
No, go ahead. No,
but
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, you have a lab, Henry, and you have
Yep.
a manufacturing thing. You know,
Yep.
to me, like I understand both sides of the coin, right? Like I'm sure there's a wide variety of people who would love Ryan's services, but maybe not him as an assessor, right? And then it's like, well, I don't know. I kind of think of it as like getting that kind of badge of honor. But from the things I've heard, the things that you're finding, Ryan, aren't like you're being petty or, hey, I'm a
Yeah.
hard assessor. I'm coming out to do this. Like some of these things are like, how are these not getting caught? And Henry, this is the point I wanted to kind of throw to you. Doesn't it kind of feel like we've mentioned not everybody can be an instructor and a teacher because it's
Right.
just they can't convey it right. Like there's just something personable
Mhm.
there. I don't think everybody can be an assessor. Like I don't think everybody
No,
has the
I couldn't do
tools.
it. I could not
Oh, I
do it.
know I
I
couldn't.
would I would be it would drive me nuts. And then what Ryan has to do is because now you have to balance it. And then Ryan goes in like, why haven't you found this? Like the firmware thing, yeah, you can get that. If people are running, and I can be defensible on it too, right? And I can say, hey, I'm running SPC, I have all these quality checks, I have my measurement assurance program, I'm running all of this stuff. I know my measurements are good. I'm doing PTs with other organizations. Why does the firmware matter? And then you're going to come in and say, yeah, that you have a valid point, though it's written in the standard that it does matter. And there's other reasons for you to document the firmware. Because if you're missing those types of things, what else are you missing? Right? This is what someone schooled me on because I fought an audit one time because it was I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was that no one should have two virtual audits. None of your vendors are allowed to have two virtual audits. They don't call them virtual, but that's what it is. It's two
Remote or
virtual
yeah.
audits, remote audits back to back. And we're like, this is stupid. Like we have to now you're making us call all of our vendors just to verify that they haven't had two virtual audits. And the point of it was, even though I still think it is dumb, because it's like that doesn't, if you're doing all your checks and everything, I think you can have proof of it. The other point was like, no, we wrote that in the standard and you missed it. So what else are you in our checklist? What else are you missing? And I'm
I
like,
see.
damn, that's the point that's to be made. Not that it's just that we were fighting that it was a pain in the butt. It's that we absolutely missed that. And we thought we could just go check their scopes. And if their scopes were good and not changed, and we'd review the certs and we'd do a cross check when we got it back, that we were good. I still think what we do is good, but yeah, we did miss it, obviously. And I'm sure we're missing other things today, like everybody else is. And this is where Ryan can come in and probably get you a lot closer to, he's not going to make you perfect. No one makes you perfect, but you can get you a lot closer, right?
Yeah,
He'll find 30 things where someone else will find 10. So
exactly. And at least I'll get it to the point where now they really have to look for it, right? Like
yeah.
one of the major one this year, right? And this came with ILAC P9 when they updated it in 2024. You have to take risk into account with your PT ILAC ILC, right? So if you don't have any risk anywhere defined for your proficiency testing, or it's not part of your proficiency plan, it's now a nonconformance as of January. So the document went into effect 2024. They gave you 1 year. And now starting this January, I've been writing nonconformances. Almost every lab has ignored it. And, to their defense, a lot of the sheets that they download from the ABs directly don't have it on there, right? And now there are some companies out there that you can get a PT plan from them, and it has, a risk matrix already built into it, and you select your likelihood and detectability, and it will assign a score, and hey, okay, now you've met the requirement, right? But right now that's a huge one that people are getting hit for. And it's one of those ones they're getting hit for, and it's more annoying than anything for them, because now they just put it as part of their ongoing risk and address it in some way. As long as you have risk, around your PT plan, you meet the requirement now.
Does it make you better? Like, this is a question that I struggle with. And when I say that, I mean, I see so many people that do PTs that are meaningless. That I've seen the artifacts, like overloaded load cells, for instance, went out.
Oh.
One of the PTs that we were a pivot lab for, the standard was an overloaded load cell where the temperature compensation was shot. Is that really a good PT? Right.
Well, and that's why they want you to do this risk, because imagine the PT is the only thing you're doing, right?
But I don't
Because
know
there's different-
that, Ryan.
Well, so-
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't
Yeah.
know that. I know that because we tested it and we have the equipment to test it. The participants don't know that. So if I'm a participant and know nothing better, I don't think it falls on the participant to validate that all the equipment is, all the specifications and everything else is what it needs to be. I think that's somewhere else. I think you're pushing that would push a little too much on that. If I'm the participant, I want to receive a working item, do my PT, report the results, and send it back. I don't want to have to take it apart and wonder if a gear, like if it's wondering if gears are worn, or all that stuff. That shouldn't be on us.
That should be more
So anyway.
training than proficiency. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no. And what I was going to say, Henry, the whole reason they want the risk with this is because now imagine PT is the only thing you're doing, right? Where, there's 12, 13 different things you can have for the, validity of your measurements, right? That has to be kind of taken into account now. Now, if you're doing intermediate checks, you're doing other control charts, statistical analysis, all this other things, well, then you can rate that lower on your scale, right? Where PT plan is like, okay, hey, it's low because I'm doing all these other things. But if the only thing that it is being done in the meantime is this just annual PT that might, depending on how you have your 4-year plan set up, it might be done every other year. It might be done, whatever.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden becomes more of a high risk, right? But it also, what are you working on? So you kind of have to balance it out. And ILAC P9 actually refers back to one of the European accreditation documents that has an appendix that says, here's all of the different factors you should probably take into account. And it's a real good document that explains it very well. So I can't recommend it more more than enough to people to check out that document. P9 refers to it specifically. It's one of the European accreditation documents. If you go to ILAC P9 and look up the PT plan, where it tells you to talk about risk, it refers to that document. And then that document has an annex that will tell you all the different risk to take into account. Maybe I might be able to pull it up real quick.
I'm doing it now so you guys can talk here.
So where do you see the biggest disconnect, Ryan? Is it, are people overloaded with maybe not knowing all these things that they need to handle, and then on top of that we have maybe not the perfect assessing scenarios and so on and so forth? Is it just a super complex issue? Is there a way to fix some of this stuff?
So it is complicated, right? Because some of the labs I've gone into, it's a 4-person company, right? And they only know what they know, right? This calibration is just something that they do along with it because if they don't, they're going to lose out business to their other competitor, right? That makes a similar product, right? So they kind of got into this and they're doing the best they can, right? And they rely on other consultation specialists to come out that might only have a background in ISO 9001, something like that, where ISO 9001 talks about calibration, but if we compared those two, in metrology, 17025 is an Olympic bodybuilder, while ISO 9001 is, your daily gym goer, right?
Yeah, so for
sure. your person that signed up for a membership in January and started going for the pizza and free pizza Tuesdays in February, and then sat in the sauna once in March and then stopped going because they've demonstrated that they actually had the membership and that's all they needed to have. I'm being really rough, but I am. If it's coming through, it's because of one of my best friends, Dilip Shaw. I can't believe I'm calling him a friend. You edit that out, Ryan. So in all seriousness, no, yeah, him and I talk all the time about these 9,000 and stuff, and it's just quality management system. It's the measurements aren't really addressed well, and then we have the new one that people have done a lot of work for. 10,012 is coming out, and they've done a lot of work on it. It's still missing a lot of things, and it's going to confuse industry because they keep going back and saying put in ISO IEC 17205 as a superior calibration, and they won't do it. So people are going to start requesting 10,012 compliant cals, and and they're going to be confused on. You gave me ISO IEC 17025 cal. I need a 10,012, and is it 12 or 10? It's 12, right, Ryan? Or 10?
12.
Where am I? Yeah, 12. I was right to begin with.
10,
that sounded right. I wasn't confident enough.
Yeah. I wanted to verify.
They had originally put it in the appendix, talking with a few of the people that were writing on it, and then I forgot the organization, CASCO or something.
Casco. Yep.
Casco. Yeah, Casco kicked it back and said no.
No, they won't do it. So then we have mass confusion on this because 17025 is a superior standard, right? There's no arguing that. It's just whatever.
It is the standard.
And
it is.
And people forget, like 9001 encompasses a lot more than metrology, right? And so does 10,012. Right. But when it comes to the metrology calibration portion, that's where 17025 steps in, and that's where it should supplement these documents, right? Because now we have conflicting information. I think in 10,012 with the new revision coming out, uncertainty is going to be at your choice, right? Which that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard, because the way they explained it, like, well, if you're making washing machines, you might not need it, where, if you're putting a missile into space, I was like, but maybe you do need it for some level in that washing machine. It is a centrifuge, and I wouldn't want that to, blow up in my house.
Or I want a replacement part and I want to know their replacement part's going to fit. And it's not somebody just pulled some, oh, we'll do a dryer because I've replaced the bands on the dryers, right? The biggest pain in the butt. I don't have a better way to do it, but the way the dryer works is you have that big rubber band. It's like a big rubber band that is super hard to get in and on and around, that pulls it tight and then spins the drum. So yeah, if that's off a little bit, there's no way the thing's going on. If it's too short, anyway, I regress. But Ryan, yeah, you're right. The washing machine is, I mean, if you're making washing machines, I would care about the measurements. I want to make sure other things fit into it. Cars, you want to make sure things fit in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hopefully they'll have guidance on some type of threshold and when it needs to come into account, when it doesn't. But until we kind of see that final piece, it's hard to say what's going to be part of it. But Ryan, I forgot what I was saying. The smaller labs, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about the smaller labs where we're seeing these these issues. And, it's unique because some of the issues you see in the smaller labs, I see in the, I'd say larger labs, where you at least have 10 or more people, something like that. I'm not going to talk about corporations because, you could have 30,000 people, but your cal lab might still only be 12, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the things I really see a lot is people just reporting their CMC, right? They don't realize that they have to take the short-term contributors and all of the contributors from the unit under test and replace the best device from the CMC, like ILAC P9 tells you, right? It tells you to replace those, and those short-term contributors are also repeatability, which now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have to take multiple measurements during the calibration. It's like, yes, but Jeff Gust discussed this perfectly in his post on ILAC P9, where he goes, no, that's not always feasible. He's like, where now maybe you do a study and, let's say it's a 3.5 digit multimeter, right? You do a study on that and now you can use that value for all the 3.5s, right? So, he kind of gives guidance on what you could do. And then also talks about, if you don't have enough measurements, you're missing your degrees of freedom, which is a term a lot of labs are not familiar with. Even though they might say that they follow the GUM, right, where the GUM talks about degrees of freedom, effective degrees of freedom, and how you use that with the Welch Scather weight and everything, right? But I digress. He talks about if you don't have enough degrees of freedom, then, you have to apply student T's table, right, or student T's formula. So you start to explain these to these labs, and they kind of get really wide-eyed, right?
Like,
glossed over. Gosh, we have to calculate uncertainty on the go, and it's like, yeah. Like, you wrote that for that device. I was like, but that's the uncertainty for your best device. You're using a different transducer that has a different uncertainty on its certificate. Like, you can't just take the best one that performed well. I was like, this is the worst one you're using. That's the uncertain, like, you're using that one, like that, those numbers have to carry over. And plus now this doesn't even have the same resolution. So like all of a sudden I don't want to say educating them, but you're essentially having to explain what that requirement states. Or my favorite one is, a simplified certificate, right? Unintentionally, they'll put, let's say they have all the measurements for a torque wrench on there, right? And then at the bottom, they'll have a statement, expanded uncertainty for all measurements, 1.2%. That's a simplified certificate, right? Because the measurement uncertainty needs to be with each individual measurement. And any way away from, so it's not wrong to have it that way, right? You can, but it has to be agreed upon with the customer. And a lot of the times I'll look, I'm like, do you say anything about that? And it's like, no. And it's like, oh, sorry.
They don't do it. They do it all the time.
There's so many times that if customers truly know the product that they're getting, and not being specific to any customer or any type of measurement, but sometimes it's like it's giving us as an industry a bad name. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a lot here. I wanted to go on this too, because the standard, I don't like what the standard requires. And it's not a knock, though. I do, and specifically on the repeatability side of things, I think labs, when they get the device back, they have to test the repeatability in their condition on the device. And I often hear them not doing this. You know what I mean? So it's part of their uncertainty, their measurement. How well can they, if they get an instrument calibrated, we assign a value, and then when they get that back, they're going to have to use that instrument somewhere, and they're going to have to do R&Rs with technicians. They're going to have to do repeatability, and a lot of them miss that out. They want to take that number on the cert, and this is why I don't like that number, because it's, and Ryan, you hit it with degrees of freedom and everything. Most labs, and we're included in this, are RSSing their uncertainty that they report. Now, fortunately for us, what we do, and I would never use the uncertainty we report on a certificate. That is funny. And I know, and the reason I wouldn't do it is because I would throw it into the well-stathered weight, and I would say, look, we report the reference standard uncertainty separate from the device. You know the resolution of your device, you know some repeatability contributions, you know that our CMC number that we does have that enough information in it that you can put this together. When you put it all together for them, they tend to start using RSS more. And it's just an observation. It's not so if we're on the same page, if everyone's on the same page, I like breaking down my own budget when I get equipment to do every last piece and put it in the well-stathered weight equation and calculate the effective degrees of freedom and a coverage factor to be at approximately 95% if that's what you want to be at. That makes sense.
I mean, I can't recommend that enough, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of budgets I review that, they don't have a significance check on it, which fine, you don't want that on there. That's okay. But they won't look at their degrees of freedom, right? And when I pop it into my own Excel, right? And I did this for one consultation, is I showed them that because their repeatability and reproducibility was so bad, it actually drove the effective degrees of freedom down to like 5, but they were still claiming K = 2.
Yep.
Well, at like 5, that's 88%. That's not 95%. So now all of a sudden you're doing K = 2 at something that's 88%. So now they're definitely under-reporting, right? So then all of a sudden I switch it to student T, and it multiplies it by like 2.25 or something like that, or 2.3. I can't remember what it was exactly, but then it puts it back up there so that it is at that approximately 95%.
Yep.
Yeah, and but all of a sudden they saw the one thing that they hated: their uncertainty went up, right? And they were upset about that. But I'm like, listen, I was like, have your customers have ever commented on your uncertainty? Did they pick you because your uncertainty was so low? They're like, no. I was like, then why do you care?
Well, beyond that, we're in real world, in real land, and let's just report what's real. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
So through the conversation, it came out that it's a marketing tool, right? The lower uncertainty makes them look better than their competitors. So I was like, yeah, but if no customers come to you based off of that statement saying, hey, we picked you because your uncertainty is better, I was like, or no one's ever called complaining about your uncertainty or this or that, I was like, then why is it even a conversation that it went up a little bit? I was like, we're talking it went up by like 0.2. Like, it is
conformity assessment, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is anyway.
Well, yeah, once we discussed, it was a marketing tool, I'd be like, listen, I was like, if it changes, I was like, and all of a sudden you start to lose business because of it, I was like, let's revisit your budget. Let's go get better repeatability, reproducibility studies. I was like, let's get that number a little bit more fine-tuned and drive that number up. I was like, because this is also one of those things where, everyone's doing repeatability with like 10 measurements. So it's like, yeah, you should really be doing 30 if you can. I was like, or more.
But that doesn't replicate. Now we're in another discussion that doesn't replicate actual use, because when you see the customer's device, you're not doing that many repetition, and we can beat the standard deviation down if we take more measurements. So it's a really tough go.
Well, so yeah, 30 if you can do it automated, right? But then even then it comes down to time and money, right? So that's why if you're only going to do 10, and your effective degrees of freedom is low because of it, then the recommendation is to use that Welch-Scathard formula, see what the effective degrees of freedom is. And if that comes out, I mean, technically to get close to like 95.45%, you have to have like over 3,000 degrees, but most people will accept as long as you're above 30. you're doing pretty good.
When you
Actually, at like 24, you start getting diminishing returns.
When you
on,
nailed
on
it,
your pay value.
if we're talking commercial calibration labs, I mean, it's going to come down to the costs and things like that, right? But I always try and make sure that new technicians and people understand, when we're teaching this stuff, we're not measurement catchers, right? We're not just trying to catch the measurement. Oh, see, it passed. It passed. That's all we needed is that this actually happened, and then you just move on. But none of these measurements are in a vacuum, and I think some of the principles that we're all preaching out there, right, like SPC and all these things, you should know some things about your measurement already going in,
Oh
and then
yeah.
when you're applying this stuff, you're going to feel much better about a measurement and not needing to repeat it.
I can't preach SPC enough. And the other thing of this is where it's like, what do you do? It's that we were saying, should you replicate instead of making 30 measurements, should you replicate what you're going to do for the customer? Is that a better representation? Really, honestly, Ryan, this is a great discussion, because really what you should do, and labs don't have time for this, a lot of them do not, is you should make probably a measurement a day for 30 days. Or if you have a customer's device that comes in and you make 3 measurements, you probably should make 3 measurements day 1. Day 2, make another 3 measurements, treat it like it's another device, and get up your way to 30 to capture that whole process, and maybe even get different technicians in it. But now we're getting into, someone will completely chew me up on my opinion here, and because it's way difficult, and I can just hear certain names that would stand and yell at me for even saying this.
But I get what you're saying. Like we're obviously talking off the cuff here about
Yes,
an
yes,
industry-wide problem, right? And
yeah,
it's one that applies so widely across the board, and so I think it is valuable to talk about. Even if the solutions we're saying maybe aren't, we aren't seeing every single angle and every other possibility, but it's
right.
the conversation, right?
Well, it's what data you take too. Because if I want to do an EOPR study, end of period reliability study, and I want something that's 95%, I take all my data and put the number in, and it looks like crap. But if I say, hey, if we're only using these meters, like you plug the fluke, if we're only using these fluke meters, this, and I can segregate my data into just this, and it's great. Guess what? Now and this is for labs out there, if you're looking at that and it's your equipment and your standards, and you're finding some that are truly gold and some are actually crap, my recommendation, if you need it, because it's all about uncertainty,
Mhm.
the right, is to just go with the ones that the gold, right? And that's one of the best ways to lower your overall uncertainty, is to find those products, find the pairings of those products, and go with them.
Right.
Ryan, the assessor, Kelly, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'd have to agree with you, right? Because one, EOPR better than I do, so I'm going to always default to your judgment on that. But I mean, so a lot of the issues I see is when it comes to uncertainty and the budgets, right? They create the budget for the best device, right? And there
Yep.
are no budgets built for any other standards there, even though they might have multiples of the same one, right?
Yep.
They're still using that one perfect budget for every device, right? And it might be like, okay, Ryan, you've got, standard A, I've got standard B, Henry's got standard C. The budget was written for standard A, and B and C are using standard A's budget for everything. And it's like, yeah, but like the standard C's are one that sucks and has to get repaired every
Yep.
every
I was
so
going to say
often.
this
And
this
it's actually on a 6-month cycle compared to yours being on a 12-month. He's like, and this is where I kind of start to run into those issues where labs don't even realize they have to be calculating their measurement uncertainty
Yep.
in essentially real time, right? Like as you're doing the measurement, they're just taking the budgets that might have been from 6 months ago, and for a device that they're not even using. So that makes it even more difficult.
I don't know if you have. There's decisions you can make. Like for us, we don't. The best existing device just stays. Why pull it out? If it's low and you can leave. And then someone's going to
So,
say, well, you'll
so that
over-report your uncertainty. Well, I'm
well,
like,
so here's
well,
the thing: if you have data that makes that defensible, that's one thing, right? But
yeah.
if you don't have defensible anything to back up what you're saying, then you got no leg to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you make a good point, Henry. You're like, but I have got data to prove that these are all similar, and the result would be negligible because of the change. If you have that, then okay, you
Well,
have the objective evidence to prove it.
and it's a tough it's really tough. Our world is mechanical, so it gets even tougher because it's beyond the device. Because great, I can test a device all day long, but when there's 4 or 5 different variables on that device, if a customer says load it, sends you their adapter, right? Because we're very mechanical. That device probably going to act different than without. I can tell you there's certain load cells that if you load through top and bottom thread, the symmetry, linear, everything is so much better than if you don't. So, and including the repeatability is even better on some devices. If somebody has this cockamamie adapter on it that doesn't do anything. So
Which happens
there's
all the time in
all
Force,
the
by the
time,
way.
and there's all the time,
Force is
and
the biggest
pressure.
offender for like
Yeah,
home fabricated
all the time, and
things.
torque as well, and pressure.
Yeah,
Like
torque.
we
Yeah.
talked with Case, carrying a bag with everything, and it's not smooth, and it's all like destroyed, and yeah, but yet our studies were done with the the pieces that were right.
Oh, don't get me started on torque and pressure.
But yeah, so
Torque's a
it's
rough one in the industry.
it is, yeah,
Yeah, so is
and
pressure.
it is,
I haven't
it
seen as
is.
much bad with pressure, but I
Oh,
hear
I
you.
have. I mean, the amount of people that claim they'll reference the ASME procedure in their documents, right? And then I'll just go, they'll hand me the sample certificate and it's just an upscale. I'm like, where's downscale? Where's the repeatability? Where's
Oh,
the hysteresis? Where's the friction error? Like, where are those
Oh, you have
required
friction
measurements
error?
from the? No, no, I didn't get my friction error. I didn't get my pre and post flick. So yeah, and actually, that one does become very important at the 4A grade because it has to pass the pre and post flex. So there should be 2 measurements with grade 4A gauges. But you see it and it's like, where are all these measurements? And it's like, well, this is what our customer wanted. And it's like, okay, well, let's see the validation to back that up. And they, this is all of a sudden when things start to fall apart. Like you don't see any request that that's what they wanted, or they're using that procedure, but for all of their customers, not just the one that originally asked for it. So, you start to run into a lot of these contract review issues, a lot of these validation issues. I mean, the biggest one is verification. How we were talking about earlier, Fluke has their procedures available in their service manuals online, or they'll have it as a calibration procedures. Same with GuideApp. People will go grab it, use it, and there will be no verification done beforehand. And verification 17025 doesn't state how you have to do it. It just states that you have to verify it prior to use and that you retain a record of that verification, right? So
you
however
mean
you do
the
that,
first time you use a procedure can't be like, hey, this is time 1. Let's see
what
how it
people will do
goes.
is they'll give me the first calibration. I'm like, was this an issued certificate? They're like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, you just gave yourself a non-conformance. Like, if you would have said, no, we did this and to make sure that we could, this is the verification record, but we saved it as the first cal and then we redid it and they had proof of that, I could kind of buy that, right? But the fact most just grab it and they start using it and they're like, well, it's already validated from Fluke or it's validated. I was like, yeah, but at a minimum, you still have to do a verification.
Okay, so
And you'll have people that are like, we have 2,000 procedures. I was like, well, you need to go get 2,000 verification records.
can I explain to the listeners that might be wanting some dots connected? Let me tell you where I see this pop up a ton, right? Is just like you said, a fluke procedure, something, whatever. And we're going through that procedure and trying to learn it or get better at the procedure or whatever the situation is. And then you get to step 4 point whatever, right? 1, 3. And then they move right past it and then they go to the next one and you're like, why didn't you do that one? It's like, oh, we don't do that step. And then you're
Right.
like, why? And what there's nothing here. How do you know that? Oh, we just know not to do this one. You know what I mean? Like,
Or
it,
I've seen it. It's like, why didn't you do that test? Oh, well, we don't have the standards to do it.
right, or
I'm like,
something like that. Yeah.
what?
Then
But like
how
stuff.
you claiming it without without a exemption? I mean, I get labs just are not honest about what they report, right? If you say you do it per procedure, and not all labs, but some, if
They're
you
just
say you
running
do
with
it
their
per
hair on fire
procedure
now.
and you skip that 4.3 section, you're not in compliant with that procedure. So there should be a footnote that says, hey, we're not. And then it should be dated. There's so many dots of I's and T's here. Ryan, the assessor, Kelly, go.
Well, I mean, what? So that would be contract review, right? So, discuss that up front, and if they're okay with it, then hey, it's covered in contract review. That should be as far as it kind of needs to go, because
Mhm.
some labs will come out and say, hey, we don't want the deviation reported on there, and we still want a normal sticker. Hey, if that's all written into the contract, fine. But a lot of
Yeah.
times it's not. So now all of a sudden you're looking for that deviation written onto the certificate. You're looking for an authorized deviation that,
Well,
one, it's technically justified. Two, it's approved by the customer. So all that. So there's a lot of aspects that come into play. Now, obviously, like I said before, contract review would override that. So if the customer says, hey, we're good with that, we also want a normal label and don't put anything on the cert, well, hey, you have that all recorded, right? So a lot of times
ah,
that,
And this happens to
I
people
still
on
don't
site
like
too.
it though, because you can't. If your cert says you're in compliance with this procedure, you don't have the note. Contract review is a way to hide that. I mean, you're probably one of the only assessors that would find that.
well, so I mean, if they wrote it into, well, yeah, I mean, I probably would be able to find that.
Yeah,
But like
but
the thing is, I'll when I go to review the certificate and I see that something in the procedure wasn't used, I'll ask for the deviation. Well, we don't have it. Okay, well, let's look at the contract or the purchase
yeah,
order that was submitted. Okay, it's not there. Cool. So now all of a sudden, now you have all these other issues because of that, right? I mean, there's a lot of times where,
it's a trail. Yep.
Well, Henry,
yeah,
would you
same.
want that
You'll see
documented
it.
in a note or something on the certificate?
I
Like, hey,
do,
yeah,
because
that's what I would have
I
someone
don't
say.
like the out of contract review that the customer signed off on it, and the lab is still saying they're compliant with this. That's what I don't like,
So
because
that
then,
comes down to
yeah,
simplified certificate, right? So that's
yep,
essentially what they're asking for, and that
yep.
would deviation falls under that whole section
I
for
know.
contract review.
It
So
doesn't mean I need to like it, and it doesn't mean
right.
labs. You need to listen to your customers. But if customers aren't telling you to put that on, you probably should say what you did. I know I'm making a
Oh yeah,
push
no,
with us.
I'm saying
Yeah,
this is the
I know.
customer like specifically asked to not have it on there. Like they
I know.
know
That's
what
what
they're
I'm saying.
using
Yeah,
it
I know.
for. Like,
Yep.
hey,
I know. Yep.
it's a fluke digital multimeter and they're only using resistance, right? But they don't
Yep.
want a big limited sticker on there or something. So it's like, cool, give me a normal sticker. We know how we're using this thing here.
Yeah, and that's still like a. I mean, ideally, it would say, if they're, your example would say calibrated for resistance would be their sticker, but that's not. We're weeds. Everything gets so much more difficult when customers want specialization that's not fit into a nice standard
It's
process,
an
right?
interesting, like, where does that liability fall, right? Because if a customer is saying, "Hey, we have our own," like the NAMP, right? Like the Marine Corps
Yep.
says, "Hey, we have our own maintenance program that is going to dictate how our tools are marked, all these things." So if we send these out to Cal, we don't need them marked or otherwise documented. I'm just coming up with an example of this. So
Mhm.
possibly, when going into one of these situations, if it's something like that, where, um, hey, we already have the control over this item. We only use it in these labs for resistance. And yeah, I get what you're saying, Henry. And
Yeah, it's
like third party cal labs kind of just have to sit there in the middle and like, hey, whatever you want, as long as we state what we did and why we did it, then I think we're good, right? I mean, is that
right.
what we're getting at?
A little bit, and then you have a lot of customer deviation, as you find, like some of the customers, somewhere, someone wanted this, and
Mm-hmm.
at least us, we try to talk to them about it, and then they're like, "No, this is what we want." It's like, okay, well, we think we know a much better way. You're the customer. We'll just do what you want, and that much better way would be so much better for them. That's really, and then you're putting, you have your procedures and everything that's so much better, but you're putting deviation notes on it because they want this, or you're taking an exception or making this. It's just like you can tell. I mean, to be perfectly blunt, you can tell when people are just legitimately bullshitting you to violate the standard because they
Mhm.
know an assessor's not going to pick up on what they're doing.
Sure.
So this is why I rewrote the definition for verification. I sent you the revised definition for calibration, which is the mystical art of taking measurements until you get what you or the customer wants.
Measurement
But,
capturing. You got
measurement capturing.
Yeah,
But I
measurement
rewrote
catching.
verification as well, and I didn't send it to you. It's the act of looking at something and having a superior or supervisor sign off on it looking good.
I like it. These need to be in my lemon calibration lab like rule book before we fix the lab. That cartoon that I'm doing. But this is a conversation I think that like a whole thing could be on this because this is something that happens more often than maybe even some supervisors know about, because if you're ever doing on-site calibration, this comes up a ton. Hey, this isn't passing. Oh, that works. It works for us. Can we just change it to where this passes for us? I understand this isn't this spec and whatever. And then you're like, well, right now it's hard for me to just hear as I'm doing the cal. Now we're going to change these things in the moment, like all my paperwork, So it happens all the time where a customer, they know their process, right? Hey, I need this stuff calibrated. This is a product, a service I'm paying for. However, now that you've told me it doesn't pass, I need to change those parameters so it does pass, right? Like that's in essence what happens.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where you got to get that documented, right? Because the technicians can be authorized, per their job description to approve deviations, right? Um, but you have to obviously document that. So even verbally, make sure you get it documented some way, whether it's an email back to them saying, hey, per our discussion, you asked me to change the specification, and you verbally approved on this date and time, right? And please confirm, with a response email or something, right? Because the other part is these documentations that are these discussions that happen all around, measurement results and stuff like that, all of them have to be documented, right? Even and it's customer requirements specifically. I believe 17025 actually goes on to it does say that anything around customer specifications has to be documented, any discussion. And I believe some of the training I went through was like, okay, what that consists of is a phone call, face to face. If you do a meeting at their site and they're talking about it, all of that needs to be recorded in some way. So meeting notes, email, stuff like that. And I've gone to cabs that have been like, hey, if they call asking about it, it's like, send us an email. They're like, we don't even want to have to worry about writing this down. We just tell them to send us an email about it. I'm like, well, that would kind of get annoying after a while as a customer. Anytime I call you the problem, be like, no, you got to email me that.
Yeah, you got to remember, you want to make it easier for them to do business with you as well. So, I mean,
and most of them don't understand any of this. Like all of this that we've been talking about for seriously like 20 minutes. When you're talking to a customer about it, like a lot of times they're like, whatever, like, okay,
that's ours. The antithesis that Ryan brought up with us is if Ryan comes in, we spend more time looking for the information because a sales guy, okay, this is this customer's account, or the lab person, they log it in the CRM and then it's under the customer. But you have to follow this trail. We're not putting it with the order. We're putting it separate that says, hey, in the CRM system, this is here. And then when you look at the printed, everybody still prints stuff, which sucks. But when you look at the printed order, it's not there. And then you need to go back to the CRM in which it is there. But the email's the same way. But people get into the habit of, okay, well, if I have it, then I'm going to print it and put it all with the orders. And then we create excess. But I keep babbling today.
No, it's all, but everything that we keep talking about and we say we're digressing, or these are all current things that are happening right now in the industry all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're mentioning things that are all for people that are following the industry practices that are a part of what we call the NCSLI MSC groups, the people that are really actively participating in our industry in a proper manner. These are things that we're all battling, right?
Yep.
Because you have bad, quote unquote, bad labs out there doing the wrong things, and the labs trying to do the right thing and pass metrology on properly are competing against this, and so it's at times it's frustrating, and at times it's like, why even bother with it when no one is asking for it, right? But the
Mhm.
bottom line is that just because the industry's in a point right now where everything is broken in a lot of ways, not, and I'm being a little bit
No, it is.
inflammatory, but there's a
It,
lot of broken, right? It
mhm.
then it's now is the time, right? Yesterday was
Yep.
the time. Now is the time. Tomorrow's the time. Start the documentation, and like right, Ryan was talking about. Yeah, you have to go through every procedure. Sorry, but once you do, and there, we all know why people go to GuideUp and why they go to other procedures, or whatever, because they don't want to write procedures, right?
Yep.
Sometimes people aren't even aware of RP3 or things that are out there and guidances and things that can help you write procedures. But sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and write the darn procedure.
You
That's
Well,
do.
my
yeah.
And you
soapbox for
should
the
write
episode.
it. Like,
So I'll
yeah.
see labs write, like, for pressure gauges, they'll write their procedure and they'll say their reference procedures to ASME, right? And then, like I said, they do the one upscale test. Well, I'll be like, all right, where's your validation for all of the stuff that you removed? you know why did you remove downscale? Why did you remove this? Like, was it a customer requirement? Did a customer specifically say this is all we wanted? And when they're like, no, it's like, okay, well, you've changed a method, right, as like to determine its conformance, because its conformance was based off of all of these
Yep.
test passing, right? Yeah, they each individually have to pass, but overall, to call the gauge good, every single one of these have to pass. I was like, and you've now removed that. I was like, and then I'll start to be like, did you at least take risk into consideration with removing all of that?
What's
And
that?
then all of a sudden it's like, no, we didn't even consider that. We just did this because it was just quicker to get it done. And I was like, okay, so a customer didn't ask for it to be done that way. I was like, and now you have nothing to back up of why you remove tests already out of an already validated procedure. All you had to do is copy everything over. Fine, it's the same test, but you wrote it in layman's terms. Like, that's not a change in method, so you just do a verification and you're good.
It,
But yeah, a
yeah,
lot of these times people are removing or changing stuff, or I mean, torque. I think Henry and Ryan, you were both on that mass round robin email I sent about torque wrenches
Oh yeah.
last year or
yeah,
this year. Like, the difference between averaging and independent values, because there are two guided procedures that I know of that allow averaging, right? But
right.
they even contradict themselves, because there are other guided procedures that have the same scope to cover those, and they don't allow it, right? And then if you look at the Air Force procedures and the Army procedures for the same exact type of torque series or torque device, right? They don't allow averaging either. So all of a sudden, like, the only outliers are these two guided procedures, where everything else in the industry and every active standard out there, so ASME, ISO, I think
Well,
JJG, which
and
is
beyond that,
Japanese, they're
like
all.
if you take a step back and you think it through, like, what am I doing with this torque device? And would averaging make sense, right?
I'm
Like,
tightening a bolt. Am I gonna tighten
hey, one
3, 4?
it fails one out of the 10 times. Yeah, that's not good. Like, the bolt will come off, that type of thing.
Yeah, but then
Yeah,
you
exactly.
start you start with doesn't matter. And you're 100% right. And yeah, maybe it does. If it's too loose, right? Maybe it chatters and it comes out of like an engine system or something. Maybe they don't need that. What I'm getting at, there's some people, and I'm rabbit trail, but some people, when you actually talk to them, like, if you took 10 measurements and one were bad, they're like, we claim 5%. And you're like, oh crap. Well, then why'd you submit me something that you say 4% on?
Hmm.
This happens to us all the time with people, that they submit something and you want to give them results, and then you find out that, hey, this isn't, you talk to them, this isn't as good as you thought oh, we're using it, we're four
Yeah,
times that anyway.
that's exactly what I was talking about.
So
Yeah, that
that's what I'm
happens
saying.
so
I'm
often.
I'm going down a trail because if 1 out of 3 fails, that's a problem. You should look into this. If 1 out of 10 fails, you should really look into it. Right? What caused it? If I'm taking a 10-point torque wrench, if even if we do the 30 points, if I'm taking 10 measurements at each point and I do 30 measurements and 1 out of 29 fails, is it me or is it the device?
Right.
Right. There's so many things in this that are just utmost confusing to people in getting this out and getting the process. So it's
So you
tough.
need experience.
You do.
Imagine
do.
that. Well, gentlemen, unfortunately, we are getting to that time, and we knew coming into this that we would be able to hit that hour easily. But Ryan, we've already got a ironclad commitment that you're going to come back whenever we desire you to. So there's that.
No, that won't be a problem.
Well,
Yeah,
excellent.
Plus,
Yeah.
Henry, I'm going to be moving closer towards your way, so I'll come out and do that audit that you don't
Awesome.
want. I'll just show up unannounced.
The audit way I don't want. It's funny because I told Ryan,
Surprise
I said,
audit.
I want the official put your ISO IEC hat on, and then I want the I want the strive for that. We're not violating anything, or we're in compliance with the standard, that we could be better to checklists that's going on. But I do want to say a couple things as we're winding down. One is labs should always be striving to get better. No one's perfect. We talked about a lot of stuff today, and people might be like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. I have to validate 2,000 procedures and all this. Do some research on it, right? Figure out how to break it down, how to do everything. It's not like you have to do it tomorrow, but you should put a plan in place to start doing it. If today you have to validate 2,000 procedures, there should be a time frame where I'm going to do what, Ryan, 10 a week,
Yeah, have a
whatever
plan,
they
yeah.
can
So
do.
so not even validate, because we don't want to confuse the terms. We're
Okay,
talking
yeah.
verification.
Yeah,
right? So
yes, thank you.
verification's the first part of section 7.2 for selection, right? It says you just have to successfully show that you can do the procedure beforehand and keep a record of that verification. So if you don't have them, right, start with the ones that your scope is built off of, right?
Right, the ones
because those are only going to be the ones that I look at, right? Because I'm going to look at your best capable device and the things that you have on your scope, right? Now, when looking at other documents to make sure that, hey, do all procedures align, stuff like that, I might be like, hey, show me the verification for this one document. And I might just pull one randomly that's not part of the budget or scope, right? Okay, well, but that's essentially you'll get there as you said, do a few a week, right? Pull a technician aside, just have them do a cal. Well, not even have them do a cal. Define what verification is for your company, right? And how you're going to perform that. And then have them follow that procedure, create something called verification record, and then keep it as you keep a record of it because you have to update it every time the procedure's updated. So to the extent necessary.
And
if you're updating grammar, you don't have to worry about it. But if you changed a test method, test point, equipment on there, specification, something, now you've got to, do the verification again to the extent necessary.
And it gives you a chance to kind of do a mini audit on everything. Do I have the right equipment? You're talking with your technician, which is never a bad thing, because you probably can uncover some ways you can be better, right? I mean, all these things are good. But yeah, I just getting at the awesome discussion on that. The other two things, which I said two again, but the other one is it's European accreditation EA4 18, and it was in 2021, and it's the guidance on the level and frequency of proficiency testing program that was referenced in P9.
Nice.
So, and it's a free document.
That's one to put in our management course when that ever happens.
To put that in there. Yep.
There's one that just came out today that might be helpful to people that struggle with this. So it's EA-4/23. It's the assessment and accreditation of opinions and interpretations using ISO IEC 17025. So they just released that on the 30th of April, but I just saw it get posted on LinkedIn today, so I'm going to spend some time reading through that one
Nice.
because people do struggle with that one.
Well, and Ryan, go ahead and promote your
Well, I
company.
wanted to say one more thing, and it's leading
go ahead.
towards that, is I cannot recommend Ryan enough. Like, if you've been on here and listened to this, quoting the standard, knowing the standard, this is someone that you bring in, that Ryan does do consulting. You bring in, he makes you better. He will be a little softer and more fluffy, right, Ryan? When you come out to a lab.
I always am.
So he
What's
will
not
help you.
fluffy? What's not? Yeah,
I
he's
kid.
all
But
all fluffy.
Hey, if you're paying me to come out there, I'm not the one giving you an actual nonconformance you have to deal with.
Right.
That's
So he
true.
can he's make you better. So when you think about that, because some people just get overwhelmed. Just don't get that way. It's someone that can actually help you set up a plan to be where you need to get to. It's not a tomorrow thing. Like, there's a lot of stuff that a lot of labs have, and it's just, can you be better next week than you are this week, and continue year over year? And having someone like Ryan come out will give you more of that checklist and plan that I think you'll get there, and you'll see it eventually. You'll see the return on that investment. In all that you do. I mean, Ryan coming out, you'll probably see that almost immediately, though, validating or verifying the procedures and all that. Go ahead, Ryan, do your plug. I just want to say some
Yeah,
things.
go ahead and plug it, and how people can
Well,
get
yeah.
a hold of you for your services.
Well, first, thank you, Henry. That was very kind of you. So I can be found on LinkedIn, Ryan Kelly. If they follow either Ryan or Henry, I'm on their friends list. Easy to follow. I think, at least I think I'm easy to find. Otherwise, you can find my company on LinkedIn. It's Precision Metrics LLC, or you can visit my website at precisionmetricsllc.com. And there's all my contact information's on there. So, send me a DM on LinkedIn, send me an email at info@precisionmetricsllc.com, or my personal email, rpkelly919@gmail.com.
Awesome. And
they can just rewind it to get all that.
and
Yeah,
just for
yeah,
fun,
exactly.
what's the weirdest thing you've ever measured? Have you had any weird ones?
Personally, no.
Okay.
Everything's been standard.
No wobulators or anything like that? Temperature
No,
measurements around
no.
dead bodies?
Active crime scenes.
Ooh, that would be a good one. Well, Ryan, thank you once again for coming on, and people in our circles will hear from you in the future. So again, thank you, and I echo everything Henry said. Uh, have Ryan come in and help you. I truly believe in his abilities to help you. So
Absolutely.
thank you both, and thank you all for listening.